internet is a place where anyone can share anything, a diary of humanity's darkest moments and strangest thoughts. But some stories, some posts, they're the ones you can't forget. Hi guys, welcome back and thank you for 40 subscribers. It really means a lot. Today we are looking into a corner of Reddit you won't want to visit alone. These are the disturbing posts that leave you questioning everything. Real, raw, and haunting. These stories aren't here to comfort you. They exist to unsettle, to remind you how dark people's realities can be. From chilling discoveries in everyday life to moments of pure dread captured in words, what you're about to hear isn't fiction. These posts weren't written to entertain. They were cries into the void, fragments of experiences too horrifying to keep to themselves. These are the stories people wish they could forget, but can't. Posts from strangers that leave you wondering what's out there and what could happen to you. So, turn the lights off, put on your headphones, and let's start. But remember, once you see these stories, you can't unsee them. Ready? Let's begin. I found a missing person, but I didn't help them. I can't stop replaying that moment in my head, over and over, like a nightmare I can't wake up from. I've debated for days whether to share this, but maybe writing it out will help me breathe again. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't think I deserve it, but I need to tell someone what happened. A few days ago, I went for a walk in Redacted Park, this small, mostly deserted area on the edge of town. It's one of those places people barely think about. It's quiet, overgrown in some areas, with a few walking trails that almost no one uses anymore. I only went there because I needed to clear my head after an argument with my sister. It was late afternoon. The sun was dipping low. I'd been walking for maybe 15 minutes when I first saw her. At least, I think it was 15 minutes. It's hard to remember because everything after that feels blurred and surreal. She was crouched by a cluster of bushes just off the main trail, half hidden in the shadow of a tree. I wouldn't have noticed her at all if it weren't for the movement. She shifted just slightly, and my eyes locked onto her shape. For a split second, I thought it was an animal, but then she stood. She looked awful. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she had scratches all over her arms, like she'd been running through thorn bushes. Her face was hollow, pale, and smeared with dirt, but her eyes were what I can't forget. They were wide, bloodshot, and filled with this raw, desperate fear. At first, I froze. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. I think she must have been hiding there waiting, because when she realized I'd seen her, she stepped closer to the trail. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. I could tell she was trying to speak, and when she finally did, it was low. She said, "Help me." I didn't move. I should have. But my body locked up, and my heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. She looked over her shoulder, into the woods, like she was expecting someone to come after her. Then she turned back to me and took another step closer. Her hand was outstretched, trembling. Might still be out there. Or maybe it was just my own stupid fear of getting involved in something I didn't understand. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask her what was wrong or if she was hurt. I just backed away. And then I turned around and started walking back the way I came, fast. I told myself I wasn't running, but let's be honest, I was. When I got back to my car, my hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my keys twice before I could unlock the door. I didn't look back. I didn't even think about calling the police or telling anyone what I'd seen. I just wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened. For the next 2 days, I avoided the news. I avoided anything that might remind me of her face. But on the third day, it found me anyway. A coworker mentioned something about a body being found in Redacted Park. My stomach dropped, and I swear, for a second, I thought I was going to pass out. When I got home, I searched for the story online. And there she was. Her name was Redacted. She was 24 years old, and she had been missing for 2 weeks. They found her body, not far from the trail where I saw her. The article didn't go into detail, but it said there were signs she'd been trying to hide in the woods before she died. They didn't say how she died. Her face was everywhere. On the news, on social media, on those stupid flyers I'd ignored at the grocery store. Flyers I should have recognized when I saw her. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see her face. Every time I walk into a room, I expect to see her standing there, staring at me with this. And every time I think about what I did or what I didn't do, my chest tightens until I can barely breathe. I don't know if she would have lived if I'd helped her. Maybe whatever happened to her was already set in motion, and nothing I did could have stopped it. But I'll never know, will I? Because I didn't even try. I've thought about going to the police, telling them what I saw, but what good would it do now? It's too late. She's gone, and I ran. I don't expect sympathy. I don't expect anyone to understand why I did what I did, because I don't understand it myself. All I know is that I saw someone who needed help, and I turned my back on her, and now I have to live with that, forever. I've seen some messed up things working as a cleaner, but nothing prepared me for this. I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about it. And I'm seriously questioning if I should even be sharing this here. But I need to get it off my chest, even if it sounds crazy. I work for a cleaning company that sometimes takes on extreme jobs, order houses, crime scenes, you name it. I don't ask a lot of questions, because it's easier that way. You go in, do your job, and leave. Most of the time, the smell's the worst part, or maybe the mountains of trash you have to dig through. It's gross, but it's just a paycheck, or at least that's what I used to think. A couple of days ago, my boss sent me and another guy to clean out a house in a rundown neighborhood just outside town. All I was told was that it was a hoarder situation, and the family wanted it cleared out fast. No big deal. I've handled Wes. When we pulled up, the house already looked like bad news. The yard was overgrown, the windows were covered in grime, and the porch was sagging under its own weight. The front door was unlocked, so we walked in, and the smell hit me like a wall. Rot, mildew, and something else I couldn't place. Inside, it was chaos. Stacks of newspapers and magazines lined the walls, some towering above my head. The floor was littered with trash, fast food wrappers, old takeout containers, empty cans. Flies buzzed everywhere. It was the kind of house where you don't want to touch anything unless you're wearing gloves. We started in the living room, bagging up trash and clearing paths through the mess. After a while, I started noticing weird things, like how there were locks, big, heavy ones, on the outside of the bedroom doors. At first, I thought maybe it was to keep people from snooping, but it didn't sit right. Who locks someone in a room? The smell got worse as we moved deeper into the house. In one of the bedrooms, we found blood stains on the carpet. They weren't fresh, but they were definitely there, like someone had tried to scrub them out but gave up halfway. The mattress was gone, just a bare bed frame left behind, but the walls had scratches on them, like someone had clawed at the plaster. That was when I started to feel like I shouldn't be there. In another room, we found piles of old notebooks and journals, shoved into corners and under furniture. I wasn't supposed to look, but curiosity got the better of me. Most of it was rambling, disjointed thoughts, but some of the entries made my skin crawl. One of them described keeping bad kids locked in their rooms as punishment. It talked about how crying didn't matter and how they'd learn eventually. Another one mentioned red stains they had to clean up quickly before anyone noticed. It didn't say what the stains were from, but it didn't take a genius to figure it out. I tried to focus on my work, but the deeper we dug, the worse it got. In the basement, there were old chains bolted to the walls. A metal bucket sat in the corner, rusted and crusted with something dark. I kept thinking about those journals, the blood stains, the locks on the doors. It all painted a picture I didn't want to see. Something awful had happened in that house. Something no amount of bleach and trash bags could erase. By the time we finished, it was dark outside, and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. But now I'm stuck with this gut-wrenching feeling, like I should have done something. Should I have called the cops? Reported it to someone? Or was it not my place? The family that hired us didn't seem interested in sticking around or answering questions. They just wanted the house cleaned and done. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they did. I keep telling myself it's not my job to get involved. I'm just a cleaner, not a detective. But every time I close my eyes, I see those bloodstains, those chains, those claw marks on the walls. I don't know what to do. If I report it, what if nothing comes of it? Or worse, what if they figure out it was me who called? I thought I was just cleaning a house. Now I feel like I'm walking around with a secret I can't shake. Should I let it go and move on? Or am I going to regret staying quiet? There's something about my coworker, Muna, that's been bothering me for a while now. At first, I chalked it up to him being a little weird. Everyone has their quirks, right? But the more I think about it, the more the pieces start to fit together in a way that's making me sick to my stomach. I think he killed someone. Let me explain. Muna started working at our office about 6 months ago. He's the kind of guy who blends into the background, quiet, polite, doesn't really socialize much. At first, I thought he was just shy, but it didn't take long for me to notice how off he is. He shows up to work with scratches on his arms and bruises on his knuckles more often than should be normal. He always has some excuse ready before anyone even asks. Oh, the cat got me. Or, I was moving furniture this weekend. It's like he knows people are going to notice, and he wants to shut it down before they can question him. I figured he was just clumsy or maybe into some kind of extreme hobby, but then there's the other stuff. Muna's always joking about things that don't feel like jokes. Dark stuff. Like how easy it would be to get away with things if you knew how to cover your tracks. He once said, completely out of nowhere, "If I ever got caught, I'd blame it on you." Everyone laughed it off like it was some awkward attempt at humor, but it stuck with me. It felt too specific, too pointed. The thing that really got me, though, was how he acts when the news comes on in the break room. He goes stiff, like he's trying too hard not to react. It's subtle, but I've noticed it more than once. A missing persons report will pop up on the screen and Muna just freezes. He doesn't look up, doesn't comment, doesn't even move. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but then the most recent case hit way too close to home. A woman in her late 20s went missing 2 weeks ago. Her car was found abandoned in a parking lot less than a mile from where Muna lives. The day after the report aired, Muna came to work with scratches on his neck, like he'd been in some kind of fight. He didn't offer an explanation this time, and I didn't ask. I couldn't. I started paying closer attention to him after that. He keeps his desk weirdly clean, like obsessively clean. No personal items, no clutter, just a neat stack of papers and his computer. It's like he doesn't want to leave any trace of himself behind. One night, I stayed late to finish a project, and I saw him in the parking lot. He was standing by his car, staring at the trunk, not doing anything, just staring, like he was trying to decide something. When he noticed me watching, he jumped, got in, and drove off without a word. I can't stop thinking about that missing woman. Her picture is plastered all over the news. Long brown hair, bright smile, the kind of face you can't forget. Every time they talk about her, they mention how the police think she knew whoever took her, that there was no sign of forced entry. Muna lives alone. He has no pets, no family nearby, and no one who would notice if he came home late or left in the middle of the night. I don't have any proof. Everything I've noticed could be explained away if you really wanted to. But my gut is telling me something's wrong. Every time I see his face, I feel this heavy, sinking feeling in my chest. Like I'm sitting on a secret I'm too scared to tell. I have thought about going to the police, but what would I even say? My coworker is kind of weird, and I think he might be a murderer. It sounds insane. What if I'm wrong? What if I ruin his life over nothing? I don't know what to do. I can't sleep. I can't focus. And every time I see Muna, I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something dark and dangerous. Should I go to the police? Or should I just keep my head down and hope I'm wrong? This might sound crazy, but I think my roommate has been trying to poison me. Writing this out feels surreal, but I don't know what else to do. I need to get this off my chest because I feel like I'm losing my mind. It all started about a month ago. I'm a college student living in an off-campus apartment with my roommate Kevin. We've been sharing the place for almost a year now. He's a little weird, quiet, keeps to himself, but I figured that's just his personality. We weren't close, but we got along fine. At least I thought we did. Then I started feeling sick. At first, it was just small things. My stomach felt off. I'd get headaches that wouldn't go away, and my energy levels tanked. I thought maybe it was stress from school or not eating healthy enough, so I didn't think too much about it. But as the weeks went on, it got worse. Every morning, I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. I was nauseous constantly, and there were days I could barely make it to class. My hands started trembling sometimes, and I had this weird metallic taste in my mouth that wouldn't go away. It didn't make sense. I even went to the campus health clinic, but they didn't find anything wrong with me. That's when I started noticing little things around the apartment that didn't feel right. The first thing was the milk. I don't drink it often, but one night I poured myself a glass, and it tasted off. Not spoiled, just bitter, like there was something in it that shouldn't be there. I poured it out and didn't think too much of it. But then it happened again. The milk was fresh, but it still tasted wrong. Then I started noticing my dishes. I usually leave my plates in the sink to wash later, but sometimes Kevin would do them for me, which I thought was nice. But when I'd take them out of the drying rack, they smelled strange, like chemicals. I tried scrubbing them again myself, but it didn't help. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Why would Kevin do something to my food or dishes? We didn't have any fights or bad blood between us, but the more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense. He was the person in the apartment. If something weird was happening, it had to be him. I started paying more attention, and I realized Kevin was acting different. He was always a little awkward, but now he wouldn't even look at me. He'd avoid me in the kitchen, barely say a word, and I swear I caught him watching me from the corner of his eye. A couple of times when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Last week, I decided to test my theory. I bought a small bottle of coffee creamer and wrote my name on it with a Sharpie, so it was clear it was mine. I poured some into my coffee the next morning and immediately spit it out. It tasted awful, chemical, almost like bleach. That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. I couldn't keep brushing this off. I needed proof, and bought a cheap camera off Amazon. It's one of those small ones you can hide easily, and I set it up in the kitchen, pointing right at the fridge and counter. I told myself I was being dramatic, that I wouldn't catch anything, but I had to be sure. 2 nights ago, I finally got my answer. When I checked the footage, my stomach dropped. Around midnight, Kevin walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed my coffee creamer. He took a bottle out of his pocket. It looked like bleach and poured a small amount into the creamer before shaking it and putting it back. I felt like I was going to throw up. I had been drinking that. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I packed a bag that night, left the apartment, and went to stay with a friend. Yesterday, I showed the video to the police. Kevin was arrested this morning. I don't know why he did it. The police said they'd handle the investigation, but I still don't have any answers. Was it a prank? Did he hate me? Was he just evil? All I know is I trusted him, and he was slowly poisoning me. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe sharing a place with someone again. There's something unsettling about watching someone do the same strange thing, night after night, without ever knowing why. Start to notice things you wish you hadn't. You make up reasons to explain it to yourself, but deep down, you know none of them make sense. I thought it was just a weird habit. I thought I was imagining things. I thought it wasn't my business. He's in his late 60s, widowed, and quiet. We've exchanged polite nods over the years, but that's about it. Nothing about him seemed out of the ordinary until I started noticing his routine. Every night, around 11 p.m., he drags this big, black trash bag out of his garage, across his driveway, and down the street. It's not just a stroll to the curb. No, he takes it into the woods at the end of the block. The woods are dense and creepy, the kind of place kids dare each other to go into on Halloween. At first, I didn't think much of it. People have their quirks, right? Maybe he didn't want animals getting into his trash, or he had some composting hobby I didn't understand. But the way he carried himself, hunched over, moving quickly, constantly looking around, gave me the creeps. It felt wrong. I joked to a friend about it once, calling it serial killer vibes. She laughed, but the idea stuck in my head. The way he dragged that bag, the weight of it obvious, and how his thin arms strained, made my stomach churn. I tried to brush it off, but every night I'd catch myself peeking out my window, watching him. Same time, same heavy bag, same woods. Last Tuesday, I couldn't take it anymore. Curiosity was eating me alive. I needed to know what was in those bags. I told myself it was harmless. Just me being nosy. If he caught me, I'd make up some excuse. So I waited. That night, I sat in the dark by my window, phone in hand, heart pounding every time I thought I heard movement outside. When the clock hit 11:05, his garage door groaned open. He stepped out, dragging the black bag behind him like always. This time, though, I slipped on my shoes, grabbed a flashlight, and followed him. I stayed far enough back to keep out of sight, using parked cars and bushes to stay hidden. The bag scraped loudly against the pavement, the sound like nails on a chalkboard in the silence of the night. When he reached the edge of the woods, he paused. My breath caught as he looked over his shoulder. I ducked behind a tree, heart hammering in my chest. After a moment, he continued into the woods, and I followed, staying low and quiet. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The flashlight in my hand felt useless. I couldn't risk turning it on. Finally, he stopped in a small clearing. The moonlight area, but I could make out a shallow hole in the dirt. He set the bag down next to it, grabbed a shovel that was already there, and started digging. I stood frozen, every instinct in my body screaming at me to turn around and leave. But I couldn't. I was rooted to the watching as he worked. After a few minutes, he stopped digging, wiped his forehead, and opened the bag. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't, but my eyes locked onto it as he reached inside. Bones. There were bones inside, not like chicken bones or something you'd throw away after dinner. These were large, clean, and disturbingly white under the faint moonlight. He pulled them out, one by one, and started placing them in the hole. I think I stopped breathing. My mind raced with questions I didn't want answers to. Were they human? Animal? Why was he burying them? Why here, in the middle of the woods? I must have shifted my weight or stepped on a twig, because he suddenly froze. His head snapped up, and he looked right in my direction. I ducked behind the tree, pressing myself flat against the bark. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. For what felt like an eternity, I didn't move, I didn't even blink. When I finally dared to peek around the tree, he was gone. The clearing was empty. The bag was gone. The bones were gone. I ran. I didn't care how much noise I made. I just bolted out of the woods, across the street, and into my house. I locked every door, closed every window, and sat in the corner of my living room, shaking. The next morning, his garage door was open. He stood in the driveway, staring across the street at my house. I haven't slept since. I don't know what I saw, or what those bones were, but I know he knows I was there. And now, every night, I feel like I'm being watched, like he's waiting for me to slip up. I don't know what to do. Should I go to the police? Tell someone? Or should I keep my mouth shut and hope he doesn't decide to add me to one of his bags? If something happens to me, you'll know why. When I was a kid, I had a babysitter named Lisa. My parents thought she was perfect, friendly, responsible, good with kids. For years, I convinced myself she was just strict, maybe a little weird. But now, I can't stop thinking about how close I came to much worse. I found out last week that Lisa was arrested for child trafficking. Seeing her face on the news hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe it. But as the memories came flooding back, I realized I shouldn't have been surprised. When I was 6, my parents both worked long hours, so Lisa babysat me almost every day after school. At first, she seemed fine, nice even. She'd play board games with me, make me snacks, and let me watch cartoons. But as time went on, she started to change. She got stricter. Little mistakes, spilling juice, forgetting to clean up my toys, would make her angry. She'd scold me in this cold, flat voice that made me feel small and worthless. At first, the punishments were small, like making me sit in the corner for an hour or taking away television time. But then, one day, she sent me to the basement. The basement was dark, unfinished, and damp. The walls were bare concrete, and the only light came from a single bulb with a pull string. It smelled like mold, and there were bugs crawling in the corners. I was terrified of that basement, and she knew it. The first time, she told me to think about what I'd done, and left me down there for what felt like hours. I cried the entire time, begging to be let out, but she didn't come back until I stopped. It became her go-to punishment. Anytime I annoyed her, or if she was just in a bad mood, she'd drag me to the basement, close the door, and lock it. She didn't yell or threaten. She didn't have to. That door slamming shut was enough to make me shut down completely. I don't know how many times it happened. Dozens, maybe. I learned to stop crying after a while, because I knew it wouldn't help. I'd just sit there, staring at the shadows and listening to the faint sounds of the television upstairs, counting the minutes until she'd let me out. I tried to tell my parents once, but Lisa was smart. She acted so sweet and kind whenever they were around that they didn't believe me. They thought I was just being dramatic, that I didn't like having rules. When I was 8, we moved to a new city, and I never saw Lisa again. I should have been relieved, but I never really stopped thinking about her. The smell of damp concrete still makes me feel sick to my stomach. For years, I thought I was just overreacting, that maybe she wasn't as bad as I remembered. But now I know the truth. The news said Lisa had been under investigation for months. They found evidence that she'd been involved in trafficking kids for years, using babysitting as a way to get close to them. I can't stop thinking about what might have happened to me if we hadn't moved. Was I next? Was she grooming me for something worse? I feel sick every time I think about it. I keep asking myself how close I came to disappearing, to becoming one of the kids they found in her files. Did she lock me in the basement because she was testing me, preparing me? Or was it just because she enjoyed it? I'll never know for sure. And that's what haunts me. The idea that I was just a pawn in some horrible plan I didn't even understand. Now I'm stuck with this overwhelming guilt. I got out. I got lucky. But how many other kids didn't? How many others did she hurt while I went on with my life, thinking I was safe? I can't stop thinking about them. And I can't stop wondering how different my life would have been if we'd stayed, if we hadn't moved. If Lisa had her hands on me for just a little longer, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. I never thought something so small could ruin me. I keep replaying the moment I found it, wishing I'd just left it alone. But I didn't. I looked, and now I don't know what to do. A couple of weeks ago, I rented a car for a weekend trip. It wasn't anything special, just some cheap, compact thing to get me where I needed to go. The trip was fine, nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I was cleaning the car out before returning it that I found the USB drive. It was wedged under the driver's seat, barely visible, unless you reached down and felt around like I did. At first, I thought it might have been mine. I'd been using a flash drive for projects, and I figured I must have dropped it, but when I plugged it into my laptop later that night, I realized it wasn't mine. The drive was nearly full, and the folders were labeled in a way that immediately set me on edge. Each one had a name and a date. Things like Ashley 09/14/21 or Michael 03/8/22. There were dozens of them, each with a name I didn't recognize. Curiosity, got the better of me and I opened the first folder. Inside were videos, dozens of them. The first one I clicked on showed a woman sitting on her couch, scrolling through her phone. The camera was shaky, like it had been filmed through a window. I could hear faint breathing behind the camera. Someone too close, too deliberate. I felt sick. I opened another folder. This one showed a man in a coffee shop, working on a laptop. The camera followed him from outside the window, zooming in on his face, his hands, the screen of his laptop. I couldn't figure out how anyone filmed something like this without being caught. The worst folder was labeled Restroom, 10/22/22. I didn't want to look, but it felt like I had to. When I opened it, there were more videos, all from what looked like public bathrooms. The camera was hidden, angled to catch people as they entered stalls or washed their hands. I only managed to watch a few seconds before slamming my laptop shut. My heart was racing, and my hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the drive. I felt like I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to see, something dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling back to the drive, to the names and dates, to the people in those videos. Did they know? Did they ever find out they were being watched? I wanted to throw the USB drive away, to pretend I'd never found it. But what if it was important? What if the people in those videos needed help? What if this was evidence of something bigger? I decided to go through the folders again, this time more carefully. I noticed that some of the names repeated. There were multiple folders for certain people, each one spanning months. Whoever filmed these wasn't just stalking random strangers. They were following these people, watching their every move. That's when I realized the car wasn't just some random rental. It had to be connected to whoever made those videos. It was their car, their USB drive, and somehow I'd ended up with it. The thought made my skin crawl. Whoever this person was, they were organized, meticulous, and now they were missing something they probably didn't want anyone else to find. I started to panic. What if they came looking for it? What if they realized it was gone and figured out I was the one who found it? I haven't done anything with the USB drive yet. It's still sitting on my desk, taunting me. Part of me wants to take it to the police, but another part of me is terrified. What if they don't believe me? What if whoever made those videos finds out before I can do anything? I can't even bring myself to delete the videos because I'm scared that somehow erasing them might make things worse. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm in, way over my head. Like I've stumbled into something I can't escape. If something happens to me, at least now you know why. You've seen it now. The stories that people felt compelled to share. The posts that refused to leave your mind. Disturbing, unsettling, and all too real. But here's the thing about the internet. It doesn't end. There are thousands of stories just like these, buried in forums, waiting to be read, waiting for someone like you to stumble upon them. Maybe it's just a glimpse into someone else's nightmare. Or maybe it's a little closer to home than you'd like to admit. Thanks for watching. And remember, the next time you're scrolling, the most disturbing story might be just a click away. Like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling Reddit posts and disturbing stories. What story unsettled you the most? Let us know in the comments below.